Hey, shalom everyone. I'm Amir Tsarfati, finally here at Connect in the Jezreel Valley in Galilee, Israel. And I'm so glad to be back here and to give you some news updates that are super important and very biblically relevant. And I know that, quite a few people thought, hey, he's done with news. And I'm done with 24/7 news on Telegram. But I'm very committed to bring to you the most important things as they relate also to the Bible. Obviously, I live here and things are happening, and many of those things are super important with some very deep biblical implication and significance. And I'm super committed to give you those reports together with Pastor Barry, which, by the way, today will be giving his Beyond part right after this, because there is an urgent event that our team here at Connect needs to attend to. In fact, not an urgent. One of our team members is getting married. It's a big thing. And so we won't be able to basically do this with Pastor Barry next to me because he's still asleep. So we asked him before he went to bed to record his part. I'm recording this one, and in just a few minutes you're going to see it live with both of us, one after the other. Anyway, let's start with the prayer and dive into our program today. Father, we thank you that you are in full control of everything that is happening, that when people are plotting, you are laughing. I thank you that you know the end from the beginning, and from ancient times, things that are not yet done, as Isaiah 46 says. So we thank you now that you will preside over this broadcast, open the eyes of our hearts to behold the wonders of your word, and cause us to understand the times and the seasons in which we live. We ask that in Yeshua's name. Amen. So again, shalom everyone. I'm Amir Tsarfati, Wednesday, August 12, 2026. And I'm here from Connect Galilee. It's August. It's very hot in Israel. I just came back from a wonderful ministry tour, partly alone in Dubai and New Zealand. And of course, Pastor Barry joined me as we crossed Australia from east to west. Let's start with a few days ago when Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Pakistan forged basically mutual defense pact known as the Mecca Joint Defense Agreement. You know, whenever they do that, they always like to give it big names. They always like to have beautiful photos. They always attached it to Islamic narrative. As you could see, they're kneeling down, praying there in Mecca. They always like to somehow give the people of their countries a feeling that they're doing things in the name of Allah to promote and advance Islam and all of that. But in reality, you have to understand something. This type of agreement that's supposed to mimic Article 5 of NATO, which means that if one country will be attacked, the other two will consider that an attack on them as well, and they will have the right to respond. Now, why is this whole thing baloney? Because Saudi Arabia has been already attacked since that agreement was signed, both by Iran, the Iraqi militias, and the Houthis in Yemen. And trust me, neither Turkey nor Pakistan did anything. Basically, for Pakistan, this is a wonderful agreement because they get billions of dollars flowing into their economy. They're sending a few troops and a few anti-missile batteries over there that never really responded to any of the Iranian aggression until now. And so for the Pakistanis, it's a good deal. It's a business deal. We sign something with you, send a few things over to you, and we get billions in return. For the Turks, Turkish defense does not need this kind of agreement. If you really think about it, they are a NATO member. They do have Article 5. So they don't have to worry about being attacked, because if Turkey is attacked, all of NATO members will come to help Turkey because it's part of NATO. So why would Turkey do that? Because Turkey wants to sell weapons to Saudi Arabia. Again, it's all about money. You also have to understand that as far as the Turks are concerned, they want to appear as if they are active in leading things that are happening in the Middle East. They are watching the rise of Israel as a superpower. They're watching Israel's strength, Israel crushing its enemies all around. They understand the Israeli economy is super strong while they're weak. They understand that everybody can see that Iran is attacking everyone but Israel, which means deterrence is there. And the Turks are also watching the fact that they're not exactly getting their what I would say recognition. They don't really see the F-35 deal moving forward. They don't really see other things moving forward. And let me make it very clear, and it's very important that you understand that. It's super important. Turkey hates Saudi Arabia. Turkey wants to be the leader of the Sunni world. Turkey wants the caliphate back. Turkey was the seat of the caliphate during the Ottoman Empire. Turkey wants to be the leader of the Sunni world, while obviously Saudi Arabia assumes that power because, it is a kingdom, it is independent, and it is in control of Mecca and Medina. And so it's never really love story between those countries. For the Turks, they need the money. For the Pakistanis, they need the money. And for Saudi Arabia, they need to know that there is some sort of deterrence for the Iranians, but it doesn't really work because the Iranians are not deterred. The Iranians can see and smell the Saudi weakness. And they can also see that the Saudis are pretty much not exactly in a good place when it comes to oil export. And eventually, the Saudis will not be able to use neither the Strait of Hormuz, nor Bab el-Mandab in the Red Sea, nor the Suez Canal, only because the capabilities of Iran and its proxies have been proven to be very effective in the last few weeks. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. Bab el-Mandab, the entrance to the Red Sea, is closed by the Houthis. And there was a drone that came to visit a few ships in the Suez area as well. Now, let me also tell you that biblically we know that eventually Sheba and Dedan, which is Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, will actually protest the Ezekiel war, which means they will not be part of the Ezekiel war, but on the other side. And people are asking me, how can you say that when we see that the Saudis are not exactly on Israel's side? First of all, part of the states, such as the United Arab Emirates, they bless President Trump every day for the Abraham Accords because Israel is the only one that came to help them against Iran. It wasn't the Arab League that came. It wasn't the Organization of Gulf States and Gulf countries that came to help them. Nobody helped them, but Israel. Israel helped them. Israel helped them not only with technology, not only with intelligence, but mostly Israel helped them with batteries of Iron Dome and our own soldiers on the ground. This Israeli IDF soldiers on Emirati soil that are operating the Iron Dome for the Emiratis. So if anything, the Emiratis realize Israel is the only one we can actually rely on in this whole thing. Now, let me show you this very interesting video, less than 3 minutes video, that will eventually prove to you how much Saudi Arabia needs Israel eventually, and that any pact, any defense agreement cannot provide what it really needs. Actually, believe it or not, Israel is the key for the Saudi oil to flow all the way to Europe. Take a look at this one.
Since February, Iran has largely shut down the Strait of Hormuz as part of its war with the US and Israel. Saudi Arabia had a backup ready, the East-West pipeline, moving 7 million barrels a day overland to the Red Sea port of Yanbu, bypassing Hormuz entirely. Problem solved. Then the Houthis blockaded Bab el-Mandeb too. With the southern route to Asia cut off, Saudi Arabia rerouted everything north instead, through the Suez Canal, adding 30 days of transit time, but at least keeping oil moving to Europe. Then, on July 30th, a drone strike hit 2 gas tankers in Egyptian waters near the Suez Canal itself. Nobody's claimed responsibility, but the message was received anyway. Even the backup to the backup isn't safe. 3 choke points, 3 failures, one after another, in the space of a few months. Hormuz, then Bab el-Mandeb, then the edges of Suez. That's not bad luck. That's what happens when a war has enough reach to pressure every maritime corridor a country depends on, one at a time, until there's nothing left by sea. And the cost isn't abstract. Every one of these disruptions adds weeks of transit time, drives up freight and insurance costs, and ripples straight into global oil prices. Analysts have already flagged that the Suez risk alone threatens up to 5 million barrels a day that were supposed to bypass Hormuz safely. When 3 corridors carrying that much crude all become uncertain at once, the price the world pays for oil stops being a Middle East problem and becomes everyone's problem. Which is exactly why a 58-year-old pipeline is suddenly back in the conversation. In 1968, Israel and Iran, Imperial Iran, under the Shah before the revolution, built a pipeline from Eilat to Ashkelon, moving Iranian crude across Israeli territory to European markets without touching Suez at all. After the 1979 revolution, Iran cut ties, Israel nationalized the line, and it sat mostly dormant for decades while the 2 countries fought over its legal status. Now Israel's energy minister has proposed reviving it, a new 700-kilometer extension from Saudi Arabia to Eilat, feeding into the existing pipeline, moving up to 1.2 million barrels a day to Europe without ever touching Hormuz, Bab el-Mandeb, or Suez. 3 choke points, 1 bypass, and it runs entirely over land. The irony writes itself. The infrastructure Iran built to protect its own oil exports from disruption is now being revived specifically because every sea route Iran can reach has become a target. It's not a bypass of 1 choke point. It's a bypass of the entire concept of a maritime choke point, built by the one country that no longer benefits from having any of them stay open.
There you go. I mean, think about that. Iran built, during the time of the Shah, this amazing pipe that eventually in the Israeli territory runs all the way from Eilat by the Red Sea to Ashkelon right on the Mediterranean. I know this pipe. Some of my family members used to work in security, securing some of those facilities many years ago. It's a very well-known facility in Israel, which, as again, was nationalized after the fall of the Shah. And isn't that ironic that Iran, that is trying to disrupt everything, actually is the one behind the solution that Saudi Arabia can find in order to have the flow of oil to Europe from Saudi Arabia without having to deal with any of those choke points, whether it's the Strait of Hormuz, Bab el-Mandeb, or the Suez Canal. And all those countries around are losing money, whereas Israel is making money from all of this. So I think it's ironic. I think it's amazing. I think it's beautiful. But more so, it's so biblical that Israel, in fact, is appearing just like we are the only thing that the UAE can trust now. I think eventually the Saudis will realize that when this dust settles, they'll understand that Israel is the only country that can offer them any solution for the Iranian problem of blocking oil from flowing all the way from Saudi Arabia to Europe. It's very interesting, very amazing, and I just want you to know that eventually man plans, but God is laughing, because all of those plots against Israel to destroy it will not only come to a point where they will be put to shame, but God gets the glory, and He's the one that has already foretold all these things long time ago. So I think it's very interesting. The next topic I wanted to talk about is actually news that broke a couple days ago upon my landing in Israel, that says, and that's Israeli censorship is not allowing to say which country advised to which country, but that's what it says. It basically says this: in a discussion between a few Arab officials from those two countries of the region about a possible agreement with Israel, the possibility of tactical flexibility that will lead to an agreement and in the future violate it. The goal: to reach an agreement now and when appropriate, to start a war with Israel. Now, as I said, it's super clear that we're talking about Turkey and Syria. Syria and Lebanon are the only two countries that Israel is engaged in some, negotiations in those countries that are around us right now. And they're the only two countries that were engaged in war with us. Saudi Arabia never really threatened to attack Israel or destroy it. And so it's super clear to all of us that the Turks are the ones that told al-Jolani in Syria, why don't you strike a deal, cause the Israelis to withdraw from whatever they took after the fall of Assad, pretend that all is okay. You're the darling of the West anyway, You're no longer the terrorist of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. You're now wearing a suit, so everybody likes you. You're the good-looking man that President Trump described. And when the time comes, because you are ISIS, you are Al-Qaeda, you are who you are, when the time comes, the taqiyya, this deception, will proven to be the right thing, because Israel will be put to sleep and think that everything is okay. And during that time, you can actually prepare for war, and we will assist you when the time comes. Think about that. Turkey is no longer Israel's friend, but now it's assisting our neighbors to actually deceive Israel in order to plot for a future war. Unbelievable. And that explains a lot if you really think about it, because eventually Damascus will cease from being a city, as Isaiah suggests in chapter 17. It will be a heap of ruins. It will never be inhabitable. And I believe that will be the catalyst for the Ezekiel war. So it may be that Turkey is banking on Syria to be the front line against Israel. And when Israel is uncovering that plot and is taking care of it, that's when Turkey will push Russia and Iran, let's go and take care of business with Israel. It's very interesting because if you really think about it, I think the Turks and the Syrians are fooling the whole world. They're fooling Europe. They're fooling this current administration in America. But Israel released this information, so at least Turkey and Syria know that you can say whatever you want to each other. We know exactly what you're talking about behind closed doors. This Israeli, let's put it this way, intelligence that actually knows exactly what the Turks are communicating with the Syrians. And the reason why we allow this piece of information to be released is to send a message to Turkey, basically. Stop playing with fire. stop meddling all around us and think that you can get away with it. Turkey is an active force against Israel right now, and Turkey is doing so. But by the way, the Israeli military assessment right now is that whenever the Iranian story will be over and their nuclear capability will be gone, Turkey will become number one enemy of Israel. No longer Syria or Lebanon, Hamas or Hezbollah or anything. Turkey. Turkey, from an ally of Israel up until 10, 15 years ago, is now becoming the number one threat of a state against Israel. And it's a member of NATO. And Turkey, as a member of NATO, has violated NATO rules many times, as it bought weapons from Russia, as it is hosting Hamas in its territory, and as it's actually plotting against Israel, which is a very close friend and ally of NATO countries. So, I don't think that the days of Turkey in NATO are long. I believe that Turkey is basically signaling that it is checking other options. And the whole Mecca agreement is one on the list of so many things that Turkey is now shopping for in order to appear as a leading country, in order to appear as a strong power that will restrain Israel, and in order to also look as a leading Islamic power in the Muslim world. Very interesting. And again, we know the end of the story. We know what's going to happen in that war. We know that Turkey eventually will be defeated. Gomer in the house of Togarmah in the whole description of Ezekiel is, of course, it. Now, the Turks are already assisting the Syrians. In fact, reports are saying that a couple days ago, Syria conducted its first aerial exercise with Russian-made fighter jets that the Syrians were flying, and they were assisted by Turkey, and they were escorted by Turkish helicopters. Israel updated the United States that we are alarmed by what we see. The presence of Turkish forces in northern Syria, and the fact that they are training the Syrian military right now, which is consisted of jihadists that came from Al-Qaeda and ISIS. They're training them now for one thing and one thing only: to eventually become the power that will assist the Turks to liberate Jerusalem. By the way, the Turks don't even hide it. They talked about the fact that they want to march into Jerusalem to liberate it. Can you imagine a NATO member is talking about marching into another country's capital and take it from it? And the whole world. Can you imagine if Israel, everybody's talking about greater Israel, Israel wants to expand, Israel wants to... No, we're not. We don't need Ankara. We don't want Beirut or Damascus. We don't. But last I heard, it's the Turks that have dreams of marching into Jerusalem. And nobody's talking about the greater Turkey. Nobody's talking about Turkey's expansion. Why is Turkey in northern Syria? Why is Turkey in northern Iraq? Why is Turkey in northern Cyprus? I'm asking. Because last I heard, it's Turkish invasion, and they can always criticize us for the things that they're actually doing. Pretty interesting, isn't it? Now, what's going on with Iran? Almost nothing. America is imposing a siege, and you can clearly see that on the map. The blockade is still there. It has been resumed since the Iranians violated the agreement, the last one. So America is basically saying, we are making sure that no one goes out of Iran or into Iran with goods through the Strait of Hormuz. And that's what the president is always saying. We're in control of the Strait of Hormuz, not the Iranians. We're the ones that are actually preventing things from coming into Iran or go out of Iran. And that cripples the Iranian economy. And because of that, the assessment is that the economic situation in Iran is so bad that they needed somehow to put an end to all of this. And in the mind of the Iranians, to put an end is not to sign an agreement. It's actually to escalate the situation and then bring it to a point where Trump will say, I can't, it's a non-ending, never-ending thing. Let's stop it. Let's declare victory and get over with it. The Iranians are banking on the weakness of the other side. They're banking on the loss of patience of the markets, of the people in America with all this situation, and the president himself. Israel is keeping very high alert right now because Israel is thinking, could be, that the Iranians will conduct a surprise attack on Israel in order to drag us in and then escalate the situation, and then the president will eventually put an end to it and decide to somehow craft a deal that will bring an end to the war, and that will be the lifeline that the IRGC needs. So in a very interesting situation, the road for an agreement to end the war in the minds and the eyes of the Iranians is through escalation, not through submission and signing any agreements. And so again, Israel is saying, we're watching what's going on there, and if we see that the Iranians are making the wrong moves, we're going to act. That's, from every stage, the Israeli leaders are saying, don't test us, don't try us, because we will not retaliate the same way. We're going to retaliate way more forcefully than whatever you're going to do to us first. So don't do that. So in a very interesting way, Iran is shooting at Kuwait and Bahrain and UAE and Saudi Arabia, and even, as we saw earlier, even into Egypt. But not a single thing was launched towards Israel because they know exactly that it's not going to end up well for them. Very, very interesting. And so as far as Israel is concerned, believe it or not, right now it's okay. We don't mind that. As long as we supervise that nobody's taking any of the enriched uranium and doing something funky with it, as long as we make sure that the missile cities are not being reconstructed, as long as we're making sure that there is no rebuilding of power of the IRGC, we don't mind this stay and do nothing and watch them crumble. Now, do I think that the regime will fall? No. Do I think that the war will end up with a total victory? No, I think that the force of nature in our area, in our neighborhood, is that eventually, we will come to a point where the nuclear program will no longer be viable, and the Strait of Hormuz, and I think the Strait of Hormuz is already everybody accepted it will be controlled by Iran, but less and less countries are using it, and they're trying to find alternatives, as we saw earlier, just like Saudi Arabia, and the Emiratis will find a different way to bypass it, and others will do the same. So eventually, even if Iran will control it, it will be far less busier than it was before the war. And so by the end, it won't be any more a bargaining chip as it used to be before that. In the meantime, Israel continues to deny capabilities to Hezbollah in Lebanon and to Hamas in Gaza. Hamas is trying us. Hamas is recruiting civilians. Hamas is actually torturing civilians and then recruiting them. And then they're infiltrating into the yellow zone and steal things, and they try their luck. But Israel, as you could see, we're hitting them left and right almost on daily basis. As you can see here, whenever we see terrorists somehow, somewhere, we destroy them. And out of, if I'm not mistaken, the 5,000 terrorists that infiltrated into Israel, 2,800 were already eliminated. 1,300 were apprehended, and the rest, we're hunting them one by one. All of them are going to eventually pay the price for what they did on October 7th. There's a special unit in the Israeli Secret Service and IDF. We know their names. We know their faces. We are committed to, whenever we see that we know where they're at, to eliminate them on the spot. In Lebanon, Hezbollah is trapped. Israel continues to bomb every day whatever we think is Hezbollah outpost. But if you remember, there's an underground facility in southern Lebanon called the Ali Taher Ridge. And this is where the Badr brigade of Hezbollah is located. That's their headquarters. This is, if that one falls, all of the control of Hezbollah in southern Lebanon is gone. It's over. Israel controls this facility that is under the ground. We control all the exits, entrances, and we control the air. Whenever somebody is trying to come out, he is eliminated, and we let them suffocate inside. They're running out of food and water, and they can come out, surrender if they want, but if they don't, they'll eventually die. And once that place, that stronghold, will fall, basically Hezbollah's grip of southern Lebanon is over. And that, of course, will be a huge defeat, not just to Hezbollah in Lebanon, but also to the IRGC, because Hezbollah was their strongest arm outside of Iran. And once that arm is cut off, the whole body, the body in Tehran feels it, and it's very painful. And so Israel continues to deny capabilities from both Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon. And when it comes to Gaza, Israel decided that the 15-point Gaza plan that was proposed by the what they call the Peace Council is actually not something we can live with, and it's not something we can accept. And there's a broad consensus across all Israeli political spectrum that these 15 points possess literally an existential threat. The critics argue that the plan could turn the International Stabilization Force, the ISF, into actually a shield protecting Hamas from the IDF. I mean, you have Muslim people on the ground. They're not going to help Israel, the Jewish nation, to eliminate an Islamic, thing. They want to keep all the weapons of Hamas in warehouses in Gaza. And what's going to stop Hamas from breaking into them and take them back? I'm not sure. Well, the plan appoints Qatar and Turkey as arbiters to verify Hamas's disarmament. How do you give the cat the task to watch over the milk? I mean, it's Hamas that was funded by Qatar and hosted and guided by Turkey, and not gonna work. Certainly not Egypt also in the picture, because Egypt, it's through the tunnels from Egypt that Hamas was armed to its teeth. So it's not going to happen. Also, this agreement or these points fail to ensure a true demilitarization of Gaza. As I said, they want those weapons to be stored in the territory instead of being removed as previously agreed. When Israel agreed to all of this plan in Gaza, Israel did not agree to all of these points. These 15 points were agreed between the Peace Council and the mediators, not Israel. Israel saw it, says, sorry, nope. We will not withdraw an inch from where we are. And we're at 70% of Gaza right now. We will not withdraw until we know and we verify that Hamas has been disarmed, that the tunnels are destroyed. And by the way, everybody agrees that destroying the tunnels in Gaza will take at least 10 years. In other words, at least for the next 10 years, Israel is in Gaza. And we don't stay in 70%. As long as Hamas refuses to disarm, we take more and more and more. We continue to hit them every day, wherever they are, and eventually we'll get to the point where Hamas is trapped. So, asking Hamas or Hezbollah to surrender, that's not within their nature. That's not in their blood. They will fight until the last person. So the only thing you need to do is you fight until the last person. You destroy them until the last person, whether it's Hezbollah or Hamas. Look, we're not where we were before October 7th. And this is why the October 27th elections in Israel are critical, because we must make sure that we're not electing anyone that is still trapped in that conception that we can believe our enemies and we can buy their promises, empty promises. We can give them a state. We should give them work. We should help them. No, 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 no. If they are committed to destroy us, we will have to ensure it's not going to happen, period. So that's as far as the 15 points that we are definitely not going to allow their implementation as they are. And we already agreed with the head of the Peace Council, Maldanov, that there won't be any Israeli withdrawal before full disarmament of Hamas. I want to remind you to subscribe, like, share, and comment on our YouTube channels in order for the algorithm to allow this video to be on so many screens of so many people around. It's just a simple click. Subscribe, comment, share, and like. That's it. It takes 2 minutes, but it does a huge work of bringing the truth to so many people. Another thing, believe it or not, up until 2 days ago, America was the only country in the world that recognized the Golan Heights as Israeli territory. That's something that President Trump did in his first term in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. There were elections in Colombia. Their anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian, communist president lost the election. And the new president is super pro-Israel. And one of the first things he did is stop the recognition of Palestine. He's going to move the embassy to Jerusalem of Colombia. And, of course, he recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. It's a great victory for Israel. And apart from Brazil, which we hope will also complete the return of South America to sanity, apart from that, everywhere else, in Argentina, in Colombia, in Peru, the conservatives won the elections. Isn't that interesting? The moment U.S. aid was defunded, suddenly it's the conservatives that are winning. And that tells you how much the globalist agenda of U.S. aid, which was funded by the deep state in America, is no longer active. And now the people are voting, and the people are finally getting what they voted for. Another thing, and this is very serious. Last month, there was a NATO summit in Ankara. President Trump flew into Ankara aboard the Qatari gifted plane, the beautiful, nice 747-800 that was gifted by Qatar. And Israel immediately gave credible intelligence to the CIA and the Secret Service in America that there is a credible threat Listen to me now, because a lot of people don't know that. We knew of a credible threat of a specific ring of people that they know exactly where President Trump is staying, which floor of the building he's at. They have in their possession shoulder missiles that can actually either hit a building or an airplane. And we alerted the American authorities and the Secret Service and the CIA. And the president realized the new Qatari plane is not equipped with any systems that can actually divert from missiles like that. So nobody wanted to take any chances. The new plane was flown to England. The old plane was flown to Ankara. But even that was too dangerous, because the terrorists that were sent by Iran to assassinate President Trump already knew that he's changing planes. So watch this video and see what happened. It's very interesting. The president boards the Air Force, the old Air Force One, says goodbye, goes inside through that door, and when he goes inside, he was smuggled all the way to that truck that is a catering truck, food truck. And that truck then backed out to the other plane behind Air Force One, which is also, see that truck, the catering truck, is going to the C-32A, which is a 757, not a 747, that sometimes vice presidents are using, but it's equipped with all the latest technology. So not only that he wasn't using the Qatari one, he wasn't even using the old Air Force One, and he was actually smuggled in a daring operation with deceiving, obviously, the media and the whole world. And he was actually taken. Can you imagine? He walks in. The catering truck is connected to one of the doors. He walks into the truck. The truck then lowers its big container, goes all the way to the next plane, goes up, connects to the door, and the president walked in, and nobody saw this. This whole thing leaked in the last few days, and the president today actually confirmed that. He said that's what Secret Service advised, and that's what we did. But I can tell you that Israel gave the Americans concrete information, specific threat. And the interesting thing is, which I think is the most shocking of all, is that Turkey somehow enabled all of this. How can a country in the size and the strength of Turkey host world leaders and allow such a threat on the leader of the free world? Right there. That Turkey is so embarrassed. It says, no, it never happened. Israel is lying. Israel is trying to sabotage the talks between Iran and America. That's why. No. Trust me, if it wasn't credible, do you really, really think that the president would be taken into a different plane and even then moved through a catering truck to another plane? Do you think that the American intelligence is not good enough to know what a credible threat is and what is not? So in the end, the Americans actually believe the Israeli intelligence and not the Turkish lies. It's very interesting. It's very telling. And so if the Turks will not get the F-35 eventually, at least you know why. By the way, a day after that, Trump began, if I'm not mistaken, 18 days in a row of attacking Iran until this new ceasefire and the renewal of the blockade. And again, it's funny because Iran is having big demands. If you want the Strait of Hormuz to open, you need to pay us reparation. You need to stop the war in Gaza, to stop the war in Lebanon. You need to unfreeze all of our assets. You need to remove and lift all the sanctions. They have so many demands. They're the losing part, and yet they behave as if they won. Very interesting. But again, it is what it is. I just wanted to tell you that over the last month and a half, I found myself on suitcases traveling. It started with the conference aboard the cruise to Alaska. It continued with Dubai and then across New Zealand and across Australia. The Lord has blessed in so many amazing ways. Thousands of people eventually attended our conferences. Some of them were in small congregations. Some of them were in bigger congregations. Some of them were, and in all of that, and it's very important that you know that, we never ever charge fees or ask for the local church that hosts us to pay our expenses. We never do. And the reason is very simple, and I want you to know, we do not think that a small church that organizes a big conference can and should shoulder the expenses. We believe that God is putting that need on the heart of people all around the world, and that is enough for them to go to our website, beholdisrael.org, donate, and then, of course, that enables churches around the world to invite us without the fear that they don't have the means to pay. We do not choose places by if they can afford us or not. We want the Holy Spirit to allow us to go anywhere we want to, anywhere we need to, and the churches should not think, can we afford them or not? Because eventually when ministries are demanding those things, eventually they'll end up only speaking in places that can afford them. And that's not how we operate. We let the Lord open the doors, and we just simply go. So I thank you for, you see this QR code over there. If you feel led to, please go online and help supporting the ministry so we can go and bring the word of truth to so many people all over the world. And I want also to remind you that my upcoming book, The Elijah Mandate, that's the real cover, as you can clearly see, beautiful, it's coming out next month. This is where I need your help. We're at the 55% only out of 100%, obviously. Go to this link if you can pre-order it. This book can change so many lives of so many believers, but also non-believers. We want it to get to those big stores, to their brick and mortar stores, to their shelves. We want them to get a copy, read, and reconnect with God and have their life turn around. And that's eventually why we do all of this. So again, the ElijahMandateBook.com. This is the QR code. Help us to get this word. And the best way to do is if you pre-order it right now. So I'm going to let Pastor Barry now give his points of the beyond. But before that, I want to remind you also that next month I'll be traveling to the U.S. for 3 conferences, one in Lee Summit in Missouri and 2 in Fort Worth, Texas. Pastor Barry and I will teach the Israel Decree from my book, and we will equip you with the best way possible to understand God's plan for Israel and how you can actually answer to all of those neoconservatives, anti-Israel voices all around, and also from within your family. This is a super important thing. I think God is very much going to bless those who are choosing the right thing and saying the right things and standing up for the right things when it comes to Israel. So I want to encourage you to come and attend those conferences, and I promise you it'll be a wonderful time of fellowship, worship, and study of the Word. So Pastor Barry, after I talked about our time in Australia, now the floor is yours.
Shalom, everyone. And yes, it was a great time in the different stops that we had in Australia, really making our way from one end of the country to the other. And it wouldn't have been possible without your prayers. So thank you to all who prayed and kept us in prayer throughout the various challenges of traveling like that. But it is always so good to meet people from around the world who are on fire and in love with the Lord. And we certainly had that experience while we were there. So, again, thank you guys so much. And what I wanted to talk to you about in this week's Middle East and Beyond is the fact that Jesus gave indication in Matthew 24, 3-8, about what was going to happen at the time of his coming in the end of the age. Now, this was a question that was asked of four of his disciples, we know from Mark's Gospel, Peter, Andrew, James, and John. And he included things that I think if we pair them up with the events that are recorded in Revelation chapter 6 under the four horsemen of the apocalypse and the things that are going to happen there, we'll see a world headed in that direction, because Jesus finished off that section by saying, these are the beginning of sorrows, which could rightfully be translated as the commencement of birth pangs. So, in other words, much like many of the character issues that will be necessary during the tribulation for the whole world to go after the wicked one, the lawless one of Revelation chapter 13, who's empowered by Satan, there'd have to be a mentality that is already in line, and the thinking of the world would have to be that which Isaiah prophesied of in chapter 5, verse 20, where good is called evil and evil is called good. So too, many of the geological and atmospheric things that are prophesied by Jesus regarding the signs of his coming in the end of the age would also be moving in that particular direction. And I think we're seeing that right now through some of the geological and astrological or cosmological even events that we're seeing happening around the world. Now, one of them is our first story. One of the things that's moving in the direction, because within the things that Jesus talked about was famine. There would be famine as well as pestilences or plagues. And one of the major contributing factors, if not the most significant contributing factor to famine, is a lack of water caused by heat and thus producing drought. And we do know that the two prophets are going to shut up the skies during the tribulation period. It's not going to rain for 3.5 years. So this story, I think, is fitting. And the headline reads that July was the hottest month ever recorded in the U.S. as heat waves scorched the country. And July was the hottest month ever recorded, with repeated scorching heat waves across much of the country, shattering all previous heat records, starting back over the full 132 years of reliable measurements. And this reminds us that if we were in the last of the last days, as I believe we are, we would expect to hear terms like record-breaking and unprecedented. And we're seeing these on a regular basis. And we've got some other things to make mention of that. And the average temperature for the month was 3.3 degrees higher, 1.8 Celsius, if that is how you measure the temperature in your country, higher than the 20th century average for the contiguous United States from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. This means that the month of July was the hottest on record of all months, and records that go all the way back to 1895, and even surpasses, and here's where we need to draw our attention, the temperatures during the Dust Bowl conditions of 1936, where there was a famine in the United States of America and other parts of the world because of the temperatures and the lack of rain. So we do know that during the tribulation period, things are going to move in a way in regards to famine, where the cost of a quart of wheat or 3 quarts of barley, by the way, is the grain of the poor, and either one, a quart of wheat or 3 quarts of barley, or measures of barley, are equivalent to a single meal for an individual. And basically what that means is that famine, possibly and most likely caused by drought, is going to cause one meal for one person a full day's pay. That's what a denarius is, a full day's pay. But it's not specific alone to the United States, even though we've seen record conditions here, creating what the article says 3 separate heat dome events, where soaring temperatures in a place over a region by slow moving high pressure systems kind of hit the pause button and hovered there, allowing not only the temperatures to be intense, but for them to go longer than the normal duration. But we're also being told that droughts are getting so intense that ancient ruins are beginning to surface from dried up rivers. And for archaeologists, these moments obviously have extreme value. And water levels across Europe are reaching astonishing levels, and record breaking heat waves there as well are the cause behind this. And what's happening is rivers like the Danube in the EU are drying up. And I thought this was interesting, and it's also an interesting marker that is used to measure how intense this is that there's a 1700-year-old structure dating back to the time of Constantine in 328 AD that has now been exposed. It's the foundations of the Constantine Bridge, this structure that was opened under his rule. The bridge is believed to have been destroyed just a few days after it was finished, or a few decades rather, but they regard it as among the longest bridges ever engineered by the Roman Empire and was a marvel of ancient engineering. It's much like many of the aqueducts and other things we know from the Roman era, and how they, I think, just kind of amazed us all about the technological advances and the architectural advances that they had with many of their structures that are still used today, such as the archway and how they designed that. And so all around the world, and this is what we'd expect to see, all around the world, temperatures are rising, drought conditions are increasing that are impacting major sources of water for major areas in the world. Now, we're having here in Southern California what they're calling a super El Nino, and the stories keep coming out, and we need to be careful of sensationalism because there's so many within the media who all they care about is clicks or being first or just getting something out, whether it's true or not. But we're seeing evidence of it. This super El Nino, they called it a Godzilla El Nino early on, but now those who study the atmosphere and weather patterns, climate scientists are telling us it's probably going to be more intense than ever. So now you've got kind of the other end of the spectrum. There's heavy rains expected here throughout the summer months in Southern California and on into the fall. As a matter of fact, as I am recording this right now, there's a flood watch from San Diego to Orange County because of a storm that's out in the Pacific. So we're seeing weather anomalies, and they're happening one right behind the other. And we'll talk about the geological things here in a moment. But we're also seeing an advance in things related to the moral character of the world. And our next story reports that there is a trans representative, Sarah McBride is his name, that admits shaming tactics failed as trans support declines and blames a well-coordinated right-wing movement. Well, I've got news for you, Representative. This isn't because of a right-wing movement. This is because of brain cells in people who know that if you're a man, and you can't change the XY chromosomes. And if you're a woman, you're a woman, even though nobody seems to know what a woman is today. The Bible says there's two genders, and I'm going to stick with God's gender list. And it's got nothing to do with right-wing shaming and blaming and all these other accusations made by this person of a well-funded, well-coordinated, right-wing regressive movement pushing public opinion backward. Listen, you can't have an opinion about gender. And this nonsense that gender is a social construct is nothing more than that. They just made that up. It's not like, all of a sudden we discovered something new. And, I don't know, I'm sure they've changed the dictionaries, but up until just a few years ago, when you look up gender in any collegiate or other dictionary, it said one's sex, biological sex. It's got nothing to do with social construct. It has everything to do with your biology and genetic makeup. And so again, we're seeing these character things that are advancing that Paul talked about in 2 Timothy chapter 3 regarding the last days. He said perilous times will come. and all this list of human character flaws that will contribute to the time of the tribulation, where people are going to buy the lie that Paul talked about in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And people are going to believe what the Antichrist has to say. And, in order for this to come to pass, you have to have a world that is already willing to accept delusion. And we have that right now, and what this guy's saying, that there were, advances made, and now you've got this pushback from people, right-wing extremists and all that. And, I think people are just tiring of some of the nonsense and some of the silliness that's being promoted as fact today. And there's been no new scientific revelation or biological finding that says, you can switch genders based on your emotional feelings or desires. It just doesn't float. And I think a lot of people are pretty much done with that. And the reality is that most of those people are going to be removed via the rapture of the church, or many of them. I hope I can say most of them, and that to be a legitimate claim. Now, we've also got another interesting story regarding what's happening and beyond the Middle East, and that is that witchcraft courses are rapidly expanding across university campuses, outnumbering Christianity 8-1 at Arizona State University. And this fall, Arizona State University is offering 8 courses with words like witchcraft, magic, or occult in the title, meanwhile, one course will cover the bedrock faith of Western civilization. One course will cover the history of Christianity. Now, Owen Anderson, who teaches philosophy, said, think about that for a moment. At one of the largest public universities in the country, students can choose from a small festival of courses on witchcraft, while Christianity receives only a single titled course. Now, ASU might argue the courses fall under the classification of history and do not promote witchcraft and the occult, but at least one course syllabus does not bear that out. For example, the syllabus, Witchcraft and Heresy in Europe, says the class will examine how the identity of the heretic and the witch was constructed against the binary opposite, the Orthodox Christian. And then it turns to religious offering, especially the female as other, and asks students to explain how centuries-old witch persecutions continue to shape their own lives. Witch persecutions shaping lives today? Again, this is just getting into the minds of people. And, when Paul talked about what he did in 2 Thessalonians, he prefaced the statement that the strong delusion would come from the Lord because they would not receive the love of the truth. And boy, are we living in that age today. And it's not just anti-Semitism that is rising, though that's heinous in and of itself. Anti-God, anti-Christ, meaning instead of Christ things are rising up all around the world. I believe that we are late in the game as it relates to Bible prophecy and church history, and that the Lord is coming for us soon. And I think our stories bear that out and contribute to what's going to ultimately be fulfilled during the tribulation period. Now, I think most of us, after hearing of the 7-point plus earthquake in Japan, now our hearts and compassion are moved toward what happened in Colombia, as 132 plus people have been killed in an earthquake as the death toll continues to rise upwards, while there are still thousands of people who are reported as missing. And the known death toll after this powerful earthquake has been raised to 132, with hundreds more injured and potentially thousands of buildings damaged or destroyed. The article goes on to talk about the fact that there's a state of emergency that remains after the country was rocked by a 7.4 magnitude earthquake on Monday morning in the epicenter striking what is known as the Chaco region. And the reports of poor and inaccessible areas and few roads are a confounding attempt to get a clear picture of the damage. And a report by the AP, the Associated Press, says social media groups set up by residents seeking loved ones indicate that by Monday evening, 2,700 people were thought to be missing. Now, pairing up this with the weather stories that we started with, remember when Jesus said there would be earthquake in diverse places or various places, that word seismos, that word earthquake, doesn't limit itself to geological events, even though they're included. But it can also mean a gale or a tempest or an atmospheric event, a weather-related event. And we are seeing radical increases of these things as we're seeing, the typhoons hitting in the Far East. We're seeing, all this radical activity. We've seen just incredible storm surf here in Southern California. And of course, that's good news for those who want to hit the water with their boards. But the reality is we are watching things that Jesus said are precursors or indicators that his return is near. And this is I believe, the end of the age that he was referring to. And these things, again, are going to be reaching their ultimate fulfillment during the tribulation. Now, we've watched earthquakes increase. We've seen their intensity and the frequency of major earthquakes, hugely catastrophic earthquakes, increasing in recent years, 7.0 and things of that nature, even 8.0 earthquakes. There were several years ago, I think it was 2016, where there were 18 8.0 earthquakes around the world, when the number used to be one per decade. So they are without question increasing. We're seeing these weather-related events happening, whether it's a drought or whether it's a flood, and everything in between is happening around the world. And Jesus gave a specific answer to the disciples that came and said, after he told them that, they looked at the temple grounds, as he said, one stone will not be left upon another. And they asked, when will these things be? And what will be the sign singular of your coming and the end of the age? Now, I think he answered the first question first when he said, do not be deceived. And we are in an age of unprecedented deception today, where people have access to information like never before. And much of the information is bent in a direction to influence their thinking and prepare them for the lie that the Antichrist is going to come and resolve the Middle East crisis, bring a pseudo peace to the world for a time, all the while he's moving toward not just the building of the temple, but violation of that temple where he stands, where no one should, and claims to be God. And Revelation 13 says the whole world is going to go after him. Now, I think it's worth noting that we are in a time where the signs of the end of the age and its coming are all around us. And they are in preparation for their ultimate fulfillment during the tribulation period. Remember, in the bowl judgments, the greatest earthquake that has ever struck the earth is going to happen since men were on the face of the earth. In the bowl judgments, it's going to be hail. And I always find it interesting, in the midst of what we see, you've got a quarter of the earth's population that dies under the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Later, you've got another third that dies. You've got all of the fish in the sea, all sea life, all river life dying. All the green grass in the earth is burned up. And then in Revelation 16, the one plague that is identified as exceedingly great is 100 to 200 pound hail, and men curse God because of the hail. So again, we're seeing a movement of these things in that direction, which tell us we need to be looking up because our redemption is nigh. Remember, Romans 8 says in verse 22 that the whole creation is groaning and travailing, awaiting its deliverance, because it wasn't just man that fell, the planet fell. And there are many who believe that the earth, when looking at the continents, quite possible. You've got this solid land mass that surrounded the earth, and the earth does wobble, and it does have adjustments via the tectonic plates. We know that many believe didn't exist prior to the flood, when the fountains of the deep opened up, and there was this. Now we've got this movement of land masses that we've got stories talking about. There's going to be another ocean in the middle of Africa. There's a split that's happening in the continent, and stories of that nature that are obviously cataclysmic to a degree that we've never seen, at least in modern history, anything of that magnitude or level. It certainly happened in Noah's day, And now it's going to recycle and come around again during a time of God's wrath. So that's it for this section of the Middle East and beyond. We know we've got a little bit of a different format, but I hope you were encouraged by Amir's portion and also enlightened and prepared to tell people about the Lord from what's going on around the world. I am more convinced now than ever that Jesus is coming for us soon, and that our redemption and meeting he and the dead in Christ in the air to forever be with the Lord is at hand, maybe even today. Well, again, as we always encourage you, please make sure that you subscribe to both of our channels and to like, share, and comment. And also, if Amir didn't mention it or it didn't come up in the slides, really want to encourage you, if you want to know the chronology of the events that happened in the last days, when's the Isaiah thing going to happen? The destruction of Damascus. When's the Ezekiel war? Where in all this, is this during the tribulation? Is it pre-rapture, post-rapture? When does all this happen? I want to encourage you to grab a copy of my book, The Time of the Signs, and that's exactly what it does. The subtitle is A Chronology of Earth's Final Events, and it will walk you through from the rebirth of the nation of Israel all the way up to the New Jerusalem and how things happen chronologically in between. Well, thank you again for joining us, and I think Amir is going to close us up with the Aaronic blessing, and just because of our format today, I won't be able to join in English. But thank you guys for praying for us, and thank you for the wonderful support that we've seen in our travels, and so appreciate it. And God bless you guys. We'll see you next week in our regular format.
Yes, Pastor Barry, thank you. And it's time to pray and end up with the Aaronic blessing. יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך, יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך shalom. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance towards you and give you his peace. B'Shem Yeshua. Amen. Amen. Thank you. God bless you. And please share this video with as many as you can. Shalom.